All right. Good morning, everybody. I have a special guest today to talk to you guys. His name is Eric Littleton, and we've been friends for a while. And Eric, you've also been an inspiration to me. So I thank you for joining us and giving us some insight and things like that. So can you tell everybody just a little bit about yourself?
Yes, Mel and I met, I believe, 8 years ago when I came to Flower Mound High School as the boys basketball coach. And
Correct.
uh, my wife Marcy and I will be celebrating our 33rd anniversary on
Oh, wow.
July the 12th. We're middle school sweethearts.
Oh,
uh,
congrats.
yeah, our Isaac and Solomon are 16, and of course our Solomon's a special needs guy that Mel has met, and then our Carolina Grace is 14.
Very good. All right. So, we are talking to parents today, and you're part of the group. We're doing Parents Pursuing Purpose, and so I'd like to just talk to you a little bit about your parenting because I've seen kind of the fruits of your children, and I think that you and Marcy are doing a really great job, and so we want to learn from you, basically. Can you tell us some things that y'all do or did to instill values and faith in your family?
Well, for starters, Mel, thanks for your kind words. We're a work in progress, and so we hope that we're getting it right. Faith and values. I think for us, there are several things that really jump out immediately. Number one, our children have been surrounded by people of great faith their entire lives.
Mm-hmm.
So Parents Pursuing Purpose is a great community because when the kids were born in Edmond, Oklahoma, so you created a great group, Mel, and that's the idea: surrounding your kids with great people of faith. Our children have grandparents of deep faith. Um, our friends in Edmond, Oklahoma, where the kids were children, young children, they were surrounded by people of faith. We had a connections group of 7 families that were like brothers and sisters to Isaac and Solomon and Grace. And then when we moved here to Flower Mound High School and the Flower Mound community have a great community of faith and of love and of grace and of mercy. But having said that, I think those communities are real important. One of the things, Mel, that I talk about a lot in my first book that I wrote, which is called Fifth Quarter Faith, Lessons to Learn When the Game is Over, I talk about parents often co-opting their child rearing out. And I tell people in this book, it's not the church's job to instill faith in my children. It's not their youth minister's job. It's not their coach's job to instill self-confidence. It's not their teacher's job to educate them. And I'm afraid that often as parents, we mistake putting our kids in the car and driving them to church for instilling faith. Mm-hmm. Or we mistake putting our kids in the car and driving them to select baseball, select basketball, select softball as instilling character. And I would contend that as a parent, you're not doing that and you're expecting someone else to do it. And if you're co-opting it out or farming it out to somebody else, it's a dangerous place to be. Mm-hmm. So with Isaac and Solomon and Grace, we're very intentional. We turn our phones off. We have a home on Lake Texoma that we spend all of our holidays and the summers at, and no technology, no telephones, no televisions, and we just have great FaceTime. And we spend a lot of time with our kids. We're constantly going on dates with our children, one-on-one dates, group dates. Even our special needs guy, Solomon, who's nonverbal, we have dates with him. And finally, I believe Proverbs, when the Proverbs writer said that the power of life and death is in the tongue. Mm. And we're really conscious of the words we speak and how we discipline and the words that we use when we discipline. And so you will have never heard Marcy or I once say, "You're so rotten," or you're so ugly, or because the words we speak do release power into the atmosphere, the supernatural power, if we believe what the Bible says. And so we have to decide if we do or not. With Isaac and Grace and Solomon, when they were really young, if they were acting really ugly, our words were, oh, Isaac, that's not who you are. You're a respectful and polite young man, and you say kind words to people and you love them.
I love that. You're encouraging them.
Yeah, but we're strict. Some people think we're a little bit too strict, but our kids laugh at that. My daughter Grace is an 8th grader, and she's the only kid in her school who doesn't have a cell phone.
I remember you talking about her going to the movie, like her friends were going to the movies or something,
right?
And how you weren't comfortable dropping her off or something.
Exactly, and so we, but everybody's got to find their thing, right? But for us, we just said, we're going to do it a certain way, and but having said that, we believe that just speaking life over our kids, and our kids don't think we're too strict. We're actually very laid back parents, interestingly enough, and our kids have a great sense of humor about that. So we've been really blessed with great family support, great community support wherever we've lived. But equally important, we've tried to be very intentional about spending a lot of time with Isaac and Grace and Solomon in one-on-one FaceTime settings.
Very good. You said some really important things there. The spending time, kids, especially when they're younger, they spell love Time. Who's spending the most time with me?
I love that.
So I really like that. Can you tell us the name of that first book you said?
The first book was called Fifth Quarter Faith, and then the subtitle is Lessons to Learn When the Game is Over. And I took a collection of stories of former players. This thing was published. It was actually released about 9 years ago, and I'd written it much earlier, and I could never get through the editing process. And so I finally handed it over to a publisher, and they finished the project for me. But I just took stories of former players and families that got it right. And Mel, this being a teacher and a coach, we have a home court advantage, I think, as teachers and coaches, because I have an opportunity to see 200 young people a day, 9 months of the year, with great moms and dads who are getting it right. And so I have this treasure trove of families and kids that I've seen, and moms and dads getting it right. And I'm able to go say, hey, man, your kid is fantastic. What are you doing? And so I've done that for 25 years. And so I had, 15, 16 years of training as a coach before Isaac and Solomon were even born. Even though Marcy and I were married at 18 years old, we didn't have kids until we were 35. So we had those 17 years of being in college and coaching and high school coaching before we had our own kids. So
awesome.
So the book is called Fifth Quarter Faith, Lessons to Learn When the Game is Over.
Very good. All right. Awesome. So I know you've written another book recently. Can you tell us the title of that? And I know you write about like the before, the during, and after. Can you kind of just summarize that for us?
Yes. Well, the title of the book, thanks for asking. The title of the book is called Solomon's Gift, named after our special needs son Solomon. In 2009, Solomon and Isaac were 6 years old. Our Carolina Grace was 4. Solomon at the time was perfectly normal, high functioning in every way, just like any other little 6-year-old boy. And Solomon contracted a rare neurological disease that almost killed him. And through the ensuing couple of years, we went through this amazing, incredibly dark, painful journey where our view of life, our view of God was supernaturally changed. God revealed himself to us in really, really amazing ways, and carried us through those difficult times, even when we were at our worst. And so I was able to go back and share that story and the lessons that we learned from it. And so Solomon's Gift is the name of the book. The website is solomonsgift.com, solomonsgift.com, and you can read about the book. And I think you can order the book from the website. Surely you can. Surely you can. So solomonsgift.com.
Okay. So you said God showed you himself in ways. Can you tell us maybe a couple or one of how he did that?
Yeah, we there are countless stories, and so I enjoy sharing these stories with all of our friends. He showed himself through other people in very specific ways. He also revealed himself through our children, Isaac and Grace, during this time. But then we also encountered God in a supernatural context, and so I'll save that story for a later date unless you want to hear about that. But a classic example would be Solomon's twin brother Isaac, we're at the hospital. I'm in the family room with Isaac and Grace while my wife Marcy's in the room with Solomon, and a little boy in a wheelchair who's horribly deformed is rolling across the room, and he bumps into the chair that Isaac's sitting in as Isaac is playing a video game. Mm-hmm. Isaac is 6 at the time. Isaac sees the little boy and jumps up and runs around and pushes this big giant leather chair aside, runs behind the little boy in the wheelchair and pops a wheelie with that little boy. It scares me to death. I said, oh, dear, I'm going to kill this kid. But then he pushes the little boy up to the video game and reaches over and he grabs the remote control and grabs that little boy's deformed hands and puts his hand over the little boy's deformed hands and helps him begin playing the video game. Oh. And that night, as we were sitting in the Ronald McDonald House, where we spent the better part of a year and a half of our life, I asked Isaac about the little boy in the wheelchair. And through the course of the conversation, I was asking Isaac, weren't you scared of him? You know, didn't he gross you out? And didn't he was different. He smelled different. He looked different. And, you know, and we often, quite honestly, Mel, recoil from that population. You know, we're scared. And so I asked Isaac, weren't you scared? And Isaac said, Daddy, before Solomon got sick, I think I would have been. Mm. But now I know that little boy has special needs, just like Bubba. And he just wants somebody to love him also. And God, at that moment, just took this megaphone out and just put it above my head. And so, Mel, for my faith, what I heard God saying is we're all broken. We all have special needs. And you have special needs, and I have special needs. And when I see that brother or sister in Christ who is different, or that human being who's different from a different economic background, a different ethnic background, a different religious background, a different sexual orientation, a different. Mm-hmm. I'm called, as Jesus said, not to strain at the gnat in my brother's eye and ignore the plank in my own, but to focus upon the weightier matters of the law, love and grace and mercy. For me, that was a really impactful moment. And our journey with Solomon has been littered with these moments where God just shows up like that.
That's awesome. I've never heard you say that story. So thank you. Bringing tears to my eyes this morning. So I have a few questions here, but are there any questions that parents ask you, maybe have asked you before that kind of come up that you could share with us? I'm just curious.
For good or for bad, Mel, I think a lot of our journey has been defined by Solomon's story. Mm-hmm. And some people may say, oh, that's horrible. You know, that's horrible. But mm-hmm. I think that pretending like ignoring this story, ignoring this part of our journey would be naive. And I think that wouldn't honor God. And so we have to choose, is it going to define us in a positive way or a negative way? We talk about allowing the struggle to cause us to be victims or to be victorious, to be better or to be bitter. You know, you can use all those euphemisms you'd like. Some people will say, what can we do? What can we do? Quite candidly, and I say this without being a victim, I say this to help educate people. Mm-hmm. A lot of folks are scared of our special needs population. Mm-hmm. And one of the unique things that Marcy and I have struggled with is we've always been intimately involved with our church family. But after Solomon's story, because of his illness, we moved to Texas, and we left a support group of people that we had known for years before Solomon was sick. And so those people knew Solomon before. Mm-hmm. And so it was kind of an easy, they're there loving on us and encouraging us and helping us through that. We love Flower Mound, but what we've discovered is a lot of families in the churches that we've been a part of or been searching for, quite honestly, are scared to reach out and don't know what to do. And so they do nothing. Mm-hmm. And so it is a lonely journey. And so the invitations to lunch after church, quite honestly, are never extended. The help in accommodating Solomon in a small group is not there. And so Solomon has trouble in those contexts. And so it's either one parent going with Isaac and Grace and the other parent staying home with Saul, or just not going. And so that really is. And I say this without playing the victim. It's just it's just a truth. We don't always feel welcome, if I'm being totally honest. And I think if you really started scraping beneath the surface with all these special needs families, you would discover that they often feel invisible. They often feel ignored. And even with Isaac and Grace, we've experienced countless times families kind of, it feels as if they don't want to include us because Solomon's going to kind of change the dynamic of the group. And we talk to Isaac, but for us, it's a great teachable moment, Mel. And we don't hide from that with Isaac and Grace because one day Marcy and I are going to be gone. And so we want Isaac and Grace to understand, listen, these folks aren't bad people. The God loves these folks. They just don't know, they don't understand. And so it's our job to love them and to show grace and to show love and to show mercy. And when they ask, what can we do? Like you just did, be honest and say, when Solomon walks in the room with our family, go up and say hello to him. When your kids have a church activity, don't exclude Isaac and Grace because Solomon's there. When you have a small group meeting, understand that it may be hard for Eric and Marcy to go because Solomon's not going to do well in your home and he might have a meltdown. And so it's been real hard for us to plug in a church in Flower Mound because of that. And it's nobody's fault. It's just the way it is. And churches, most churches do the best they can, but it still is difficult.
What about at school? Because I feel like at Flower Mound High School, I feel like that may not be the norm because I think our students are, for the most part, pretty accepting of that population. And maybe I'm wrong, but tell me your experience with that.
You touched a chord on that one with me. And I say this with respect, Mel. I don't say this to be disrespectful towards any fellowships in Flower Mound. Beautiful churches with beautiful people. But a dear friend of mine, a guy that's like a brother to me back in Edmond, Oklahoma, and I were talking about 2 years ago. And we talk regularly, every week. We talk at least once a week for 8 years. And sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. And he's a man of deep, deep faith. He's a guy that really holds me accountable in my faith walk. Asks me really hard questions about my faith walk, and that's what you want in life, right? About 2 years ago, he said, "Hey, can I stop you for a second?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "Everything that you say about Flower Mound High School is what I wish we could say about our churches in America. Everything that you say about the faculty and the students and the community of Flower Mound High School is what I wish we could say about all of our churches." And he said, Flower Mound High School is your church, isn't it? And I'd never thought of it in those terms, but what I realized is I'm surrounded by people at Flower Mound High School who love me and who have loved my special needs son with grace and with love and with mercy. And we have the most amazing special ed department. But not only special ed department, we don't take those kids and stuff them away in a corner and ignore them. The entire Flower Mound High School family loves Solomon and all those kids in that special needs room. And I see that not only with the special needs kids, but I see it in the classroom with other kids of different sexual orientations, kids of different religious backgrounds, different skin colors. Now, we're not perfect, and sometimes we miss the mark. But I see countless examples of that at Flower Mound High School. So the answer to your question is yes. Flower Mound High School gets it, and I'll be able to retire in 4 years. And my wife said, "I'm not looking forward to it. I'm not counting the days down." And my wife said, "You're not going to be able to leave that place." And she's right. It is my family. It is our family. So, and you are part of that Jaguar family, so you understand.
Yeah, we're, our saying, once a Jag, always a Jag. So
always a Jag. And Sonia Lell, who was our principal, hired me, who just retired, really created, as best as I can tell, that culture. And then Chad Russell, who's our new principal, was an assistant principal at Flower Mound for many years. Will continue to grow that family and continue to grow that culture that he was a part of starting with Ms. Lell, quite honestly. So.
Yeah. So if anybody, because part of my mission and journey and purpose is to help anybody who influences youth. And so in the education system, if you are plugged in at all to where your school is, something that our school does that I think is really good is Circle of Friends. And it's the general ed population, and they are friends of the special needs population. And we do, we have our adapted PE program, which I was a teacher for. We do a buddy system, and the typical kids are paired up with the special needs kids. And they just love on those kids, and that's what they need, because they're just a circle of friends. And so also a lot of the students that are in that program go off to be special ed educators, and so it is awesome. But aside from the PE program, we have, Circle of Friends ball. It's like their prom, and they get to dance and have fun, and it's just a really great community that I couldn't brag on enough. So,
well, yeah, we have Philip Humphreys, who's kind of the guy in charge of all that, does a great job. Mm-hmm. Solomon works with a lady named Leah, Miss Leah, and then you have Miss Maddie Rainwater, and Leah Hansiger, and just great men and women who love these kids. One of my favorite stories is about, 4 years ago. Solomon was still in a middle school at the time, but we used to ride a tandem bicycle to school. Mm-hmm. Solomon and I did every morning, and so we love that. He loves that bicycle ride. And then we would walk down to the gymnasium and to my locker room, and he and I would shower. And he loved all that experience, because he got to be in the locker room like the basketball players are. But then I would take him back to the front of the high school and put him on a bus to go to his middle school. One morning, as I walked through the high school to the locker room and back, and this is before the school had begun, so we get there really early. So he catches his bus at like 7:45. So it's an hour before school begins. So the hallways are not littered with kids. Mm-hmm. I started counting how many neurotypical students without special needs, spoke to Solomon. And in that window, which is only about a 7 to 8 minute window walking from one building to the other, there were 27 kids who hollered at Solomon, came by and gave Solomon high fives or gave Solomon hugs in a 7 to 8 minute window, Mel. Awesome. And I was brought to tears by this group of young people who just loved him, because they have grown up in a culture of love and a culture of grace and a culture of mercy, which goes right back to what we talk about, regardless of your special need. We all have special needs, and these kids get it at Flower Mound High School, but that's a tribute to the leadership of Flower Mound High School. We take Solomon to the CAC to swim on occasion, and inevitably, when we take him there to swim, within 15 minutes, a group of kids will run up to Solomon and say hi to him, and they'll grab him by the hands and take him with them down the slides and around the lazy river. And he's just got this big smile on his face. And so it's just the neatest thing to see. Flower Mound gets it and could be used as a case study for every high school in America on how to interact with these special needs community.
Yeah, I know. My neighbor actually, she has students come in all the time. Her son goes to our school, to Flower Mound as well, and all the time, students are coming, pick him up. Hey, you want to go bowling or whatever else? And so
I love that. It's just a beautiful thing.
They're awesome. What would you tell parents that have children with special needs regarding to their children that have just like a special need? What do you wish that you knew beforehand? Maybe it was at first in your journey. What could you tell them?
To parents of special needs kids now?
Yes.
That's a great question, Mel. I had a mother, I lose track of time now. It was towards the end of the school year, so 6-7 weeks ago, who came to me in tears, who we knew through mutual friends, and I was in a gym at the time, and she had an older child in the gym, and so she came up to me, "You're Coach Littleton?" And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, and then she started crying right there in the lobby. And said, my son has just been diagnosed with autism, and he's nonverbal, and she was scared. And I understand that because, we had a little boy by most people's measure everybody's measure was normal for 6 years, but then got sick and everything changed. And so we understand the pain and the fear. The first thing that I would say was just allow God to work. My wife has this amazing, beautiful heart. And I'll never forget the day that she said, God isn't finished with us yet. God isn't finished with us yet. And she went on to say, and she's crying and she's saying this because we wanted this to go away. We wanted this to go away. And my wife says, I don't want our pain to be wasted. I don't want our pain to be wasted. So my wife was teaching me, my wife's dragging me along. And so what I would say to all these families is don't allow the pain to be wasted because God isn't finished with you yet. Listen, pay attention, journal, listen for God's voice in those moments with your special needs child, because something does happen with us. And our children and our special needs children especially show us God in a really unique and special way. And Solomon's story has molded Isaac and Grace's heart in the most amazing ways. Isaac and Grace are kids who love God and who believe in a supernatural God, a God who still supernaturally heals sick people, who heals sick children. They've seen God heal broken children. And they've seen God work in Solomon's life, and his story has been used. God has used Solomon to mold Isaac and Grace's hearts. So I would just tell moms and dads of these special needs kids, number one, God isn't finished with you yet. Don't let the pain be wasted. But then I would say, don't forget each other. Almost 80% of these families, Mel, end up in divorce. The ripple effects of a special needs child are devastating. And I write about that in my book, by the way, Solomon's Gift. And so I would tell the wife, quite candidly, don't forget that you have a husband. Don't forget there was a man once that you thought was the sexiest, hottest thing in the world, and continue to let him know that, and give him your time and give him of yourself. And then I tell the husband, listen, let your wife grieve and sit with her, and don't try to tell her that she can't fix it, because moms turn into Joan of Arcs. They do. They're just, pardon my language, but my wife is one badass Joan of Arc Christian, and my wife is constantly trying to find ways to make it better for Solomon. And if I'm being totally honest, there are days where I just want to say, "Oh, can we not let it rest?" And I've learned that I need to be able to sit and let Marcy think out loud. And Marcy is always reminded, "Hey, we have a marriage here." So it works both ways, right?
Yes.
So we've been able to navigate that, and it hasn't always been easy. It hasn't always been without huge potholes. And I don't ever want to paint this as a picture of perfection, because Marcy and I both, if we were able to sit down for an entire evening with someone, could tell you stories of the ugly darkness of that. But there's also beauty. There's also incredible beauty in that pain, incredible beauty in that struggle. And when you get to the other side, you look back and you say, okay. And so my love for Marcy has reached new dimensions during this journey. And if you can hang in there, parenting's hard, as you know. Parenting to a sick child is just unbearable. Being married through the death of a child. We've had several friends who've lost children. We don't know how they do that, because we know how hard it was for us. And so but God steps in. So God steps in.
Yeah. Awesome. So much wisdom there. And even you sharing about the pain. I mean, that is a message to anybody with any pain.
Right.
So thank you. Thank you for that wisdom. So you're talking about your other two kids, and how have you kind of walked alongside them in this journey as well with Solomon?
Um, that was really our biggest concern, Mel. We see so often, not only is divorce substantially higher in special needs families. It approaches one article that I read down in a clinic in Austin, Texas, while Solomon was sick. I said it's in my book. Pediatric neurological diseases: the collateral damage was the title of the article. And I'm reading it, and Marcy and Solomon are sitting over there, and Solomon's just, he's just a shell of a human, of a person, and Isaac and Grace are in the room with us. But the subtitle said the collateral damage, and it talked about the divorce rate. It talked about the financial impacts. Mel, we just wrote a check just this morning for $7,000 to healthcare providers that our insurance company refuses to pay. Our insurance company in Oklahoma dropped us and caused us to foreclose upon a house and lose dozens of rental houses that we had to sell to pay for. And so there's a financial impact. And then there's also a much higher rate of sibling juvenile delinquency among children with siblings of special needs, because they become the other kid, right? They become the other kid. So what did we do? With Isaac and Grace, number one, we were very honest, really honest, and never misled them, never hid the pain from them. But we were also really quick to talk to them about redeeming the pain. God's working here, guys. We don't know what's going to happen to Solomon, but we want you to know that we're going to walk through this with grace. We're going to walk through this with love. We're going to walk through this with mercy. The other thing that we did is we really spend a lot of time with Isaac and with Grace one-on-one. I talked to a dear friend of ours who grew up with a special needs sister, and she loves her now. And our friend is in her 40s now, and we've known her for about 15 years. And she said that she has no relationship with her mom. I said, why? And she goes, because my mom was my sister's parent. My dad was my parent. And she said, and she went on to explain, and she's a woman of deep faith. She said, I love my sister with all of my heart, and I consider it an honor that I'm going to be her caregiver when mom and dad are gone. But I never had a mother. So the point is, one-on-one dates is the short answer. It's on our calendar. We don't just, oh, by the way, we got to go on a date. It's date night. Isaac and Dad, Isaac and Grace, Marcy and Isaac, Marcy and Grace. We have that on our calendar, and it is sacred. It is religious. We do not deviate from that at all. We say no to every other outside invitation, their friends' invitations, and the things in our life that come upon us. It is sacred territory. I wish I could say that Marcy and I are as good as holding on to our dates as we should be. We're not. But we are really good about hanging on to those dates with Isaac and Grace. Marcy with Isaac, Marcy with Grace, me with Isaac, me with Grace. And during that time, we listen. Hey, Isaac, what's God doing in your life right now? Gracie, tell me about God. Tell me about your walk with God. What's God doing with you? What's God going to do with your life? What's God saying to you right now? I think a lot of questions are important, and get rid of the phones, get rid of the televisions, get rid of the technology. Those things suck the life out of our relationships.
That's awesome. It's so funny because, I taught teen leadership, and one of our lessons is in family, and you basically hit, because it says the 4 ways to build relationships. Any relationship is to affirm and listen, and to spend time, and then build relationships. So you're hitting all of them. So you're doing a great job, and I really appreciate you sharing that. Well, I know Flower Mound does a good job, but what should a typical child, know about children that have special needs, and how should a parent communicate that with their children?
Yeah, one of the things that I do at my camps, where we'll have several hundred kids come to our basketball camps for elementary and middle school age, and with my varsity players and with my students, is I coach them on how to interact with special needs kids. And so, and many of these kids are nonverbal or don't have the ability to communicate effectively. And so I actually role play with them or show them, how do you talk to a nonverbal kid or a kid who can't communicate back? And sometimes they don't know, so there's awkwardness. And so I tell them, you have to have a conversation where you ask the question, but then you pause, and then you answer the question. Hey, Solomon, how are you doing today, buddy? You look like you're doing fantastic. So are you going to school today? Good for you. So what is your favorite thing to do at school? Mm-hmm. Do you like PE class? Hey, do you guys ride the scooter at PE class? And so you ask questions and you really kind of answer the question. And a lot of times those kids will stare off into space. Mm-hmm. And you sit there and say, they don't know anything that's going on here. But they do. Mm-hmm. But the wiring is such that it just takes it a while to get there. You know, there's so much stimuli that sometimes you won't get any kind of response. And often you won't get any response ever. But there are moments when, boy, everything just clicks and boy, the eyes will click and but even then they hear you, they know you're talking to them, and they know that you're including them. And Solomon and I went on a bike ride this past weekend, and Thursday night. Mm-hmm. Thursday night we went on a long bike ride here in our neighborhood, and we were gone for about 4 hours. And at one point we stopped at the community park, and there were 4 teenage kids, great kids. We live out here in Argyle and Canyon Falls. And there were 4 teenage kids, middle school age, 13, 14, a couple of boys and a couple of girls. And they had climbed up onto this tower, and they were just kind of sitting there talking, really polite, respectful kids. And I saw Solomon walking up to them and kind of looking up at them and listening to them. And no judgment intended, but I was kind of sitting there saying, boy, dear God, let these 4 kids hit a home run. Mm-hmm. I kept waiting for them to say, hey, buddy, you want to come up here with us? Mm-hmm. And there's no judgment intended, okay? They're great kids, very polite, very respectful. They did not do that, and I wasn't angry at them. I was not bitter about it, but they weren't sure what to do. Mm-hmm. And it's because they've never been coached on what to do. So I like your question. Mom and Dad, what do you tell your neurotypical kid, your normal kid, when you see these guys? And so the home run would have been, hey, buddy, you want to come up here with us? Come on, let's go.
Right.
And, when we go to Flower Mound proper and we're at the CAC or we're at Lifetime, inevitably you'll see that interaction. Solomon, hey, come with us to the slide, buddy. And so, talk to your kids about interacting with these guys and not allowing a blank stare to discourage you from interacting with them, because those kids know it.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. So you talk about Isaac, and I know I've talked about modeling and how our kids oftentimes follow in our footsteps. So Isaac's written, is it 2 books now?
No, Isaac has published 3 books now.
Oh, wow. Okay. And, I'm one behind.
His 4th and his 5th book are currently being edited.
Wow. And he tells everybody how old he is now?
Isaac is now 16, but he wrote his first book when he was 12, and it was published when he was 13. And while it was being published during his 13th year, he was writing his 2nd book, and it was published when he was 14. And while that one was being published, he wrote his 3rd book during his 14th year.
Wow.
He published when he was 16. And now that he's 16, he's written his 5th book and his 6th book that are waiting to be edited. And he's in the process of writing his 6th book. So 3 have been published, 2 are being edited as we speak. And that is his thing. Writing is Isaac's thing. I'm a basketball coach, and Isaac, interestingly enough, is the tallest kid in his class at Flower Mound High School and doesn't play basketball. And I'll have parents all the time say, "Aren't you disappointed?" No, not the least bit. Isaac is a good writer, and when he was 2, before he could even pick up a pencil and write his ABCs, he would come to us and hand us a notepad and a pencil and say, "Hey, Daddy, hey, Mommy, write this story for me." And he would start telling stories about superheroes fighting the bad guy. And then we would have to stop him and say, "No, hey, you got to put a period here somewhere. Where can I put the period?" He was getting grammar lessons as early as 2 and 3 years old. Because he would just start, it was one continuous stream of consciousness rant, and there was no punctuation. And I said, "Hey, buddy, listen." And Spider-Man climbed up the building, and he says, "Well," and I said, "Hey, listen, let me talk to you about sentence diversity. Let me talk to you about sentence structure." And so he was being brainwashed at an early age, and his mom did the same thing. So Isaac is a writer, will be a writer. This is his gift. He has found it. What a wonderful blessing that at an early age, he knew exactly what he wanted to do. One of the books he's working on right now, which I'm really excited about, is called My Brother's Keeper. And it's going to be his story of Solomon. And I have not allowed him to read Solomon's gift because I don't want my memories to be his memories. And Isaac will come to me sometimes and say, "Hey, Dad, this time when this happened, and is that how it really happened? And is that right? Is that my memory or is that your memory, Dad?" I said, "That one's mine. You can't have it." So Isaac's a writer and has a really tender heart. And Isaac is Solomon's best friend.
Yeah.
Solomon adores Isaac, and Isaac spoils him rotten. And Solomon will do anything Isaac asks him to do. Solomon, when Isaac says, "Hey, Saul," Solomon just wants Isaac's affirmation and gets tons of it. So he's wonderful. And,
because in case they missed it when you kind of introduced your family, they're twins.
Yes, they are twins. And the book Solomon's Gift, I believe, I'd have to go back and reread it. If I'm not mistaken, the very first chapter is a chapter about Grace and Isaac and I when they were 6 and 4, and Solomon's inside this room, laying on a table with wires hooked up to him, and we're standing outside, and it's one of those two-way mirrors where we can see in. And Solomon couldn't see out if he wanted to, but he was unresponsive, so it didn't matter. But in that opening chapter, I write about Isaac only being 15 feet away or 10 feet away from his twin brother, but it might as well have been a million miles, and how it was the furthest they'd been apart since the day they were conceived. And wondered out loud how this was impacting Isaac's heart, because Isaac and Solomon, as twins, they have that symbiotic thing going on, how that impacted Isaac. And I still remember the day where Isaac asked me when he was a little boy, "Daddy, am I going to get sick too like Solomon?" And just these really gut-wrenching conversations. But it molded Isaac's heart in a really unique way. God has done a good work with Isaac. And so we're really proud of Isaac and the young man he has become, and the love that he has he's quirky. He'll embrace his quirkiness. And so I can say that publicly. He embraces that. He knows he's not a jock. He's not a cool kid. He likes jocks. One of his closest friends is a jock, and one of his other good buddies is a cool kid. And some of his buddies are nerds, and some of his buddies are band geeks, and some of his buddies are. So he has this real eclectic group of friends that we just love, and so he's been able to embrace everybody for who they are, with their special needs.
Yeah, you said I kind of went over it, but you talked about you found your kid's bent. We all have a bent, and you encourage them in it. Somebody asked you, "Oh, you said he didn't play basketball." Well, no, because this was his strength. This is what he's good at, and y'all encouraged him in that. So that's awesome as well. And I know I call her Gracie.
Her close friends do. So you knew her as Gracie. Yeah.
But I know she has her own. Tell us about her.
Grace is a walking musical.
Yes.
She plays volleyball and loves volleyball. And she's a typical coach's kid. She understands that she's not the best one on the court. But you'll be hard pressed to find anybody who will be a better teammate. And she has the language too. She has the words to I know I'm not going to score all the points, or I don't know volleyball. I don't know the language of it. I enjoy watching her play, but I know that I can be there and work hard and make everybody else better, and pass to the right people and set the ball properly. And when I'm on the bench, be the one who's standing up and clapping. So I love that about Grace. And she played club volleyball this year, and was on the bench and played in some games a lot and some games a little. And I basked in her body language on the sideline.
Mm.
I celebrated her body language on the sideline, and I was watching it closely. Did have one instance where it wasn't as good as I'd hoped it would be.
Mm-hmm.
And so on the car ride home, we had this really unique conversation where I was able to say, hey, sis, and she was a little bit pouty in the car. And this is not normal, by the way. She's not a pouter. But I said, hey, sis, can we have a really adult conversation without it becoming a huge drama?
I love how you set that up.
Yeah. Yes, Dad. Hey, listen, for starters, I want to get this right as a dad. And I want to give you a chance to get it right as a teenager. So are you ready for the conversation? I think I am. And I said, hey, tell me what you were thinking with your body language here. And boy, at first she was really defensive. And so we had asked a lot of questions for 15 minutes, and I was able to be calm. And then it didn't quite go the way I wanted it to, Mel. And so after about 15 minutes, I said, hey, why don't we do this? When we get home, and I was proud of myself because I'm trying to get it right as a parent, instead of saying,
Yes.
I said, because I get it wrong a lot, by the way. I won't tell you all those stories, but I do get it wrong, by the way. I said, hey, when we get home, why don't you go take a shower and grab something to eat, and then come sit down with mom and me in the living room. And listen, I'm gonna tell you again, I really want to get this right. I'm not mad yet, Grace. I'm not mad yet. Okay. And so an hour later, when she had time, she came walking in there and she sat down and she said, okay, I'm so sorry. I was acting like a baby. That's not who I am. It's not about me. And she said all the right things. Mm-hmm. I need to be there supporting my teammates and encouraging my teammates. It doesn't matter if I play or don't play. And it's not about the coach and whether or not he likes me or doesn't like me. And it's not about whether he plays me or doesn't play me, or whether he makes the right call or the wrong call. It's about how I respond to it. As a coach, I'm going to hear that. So she got it right. And
that's awesome. And parents, don't miss how he handled that. He asked questions. He didn't lecture her. He allowed time for her to reflect. Right. And then that gave ownership to her in taking that responsibility. So we do snaps in teen leadership. So snaps for that.
Yeah, the snaps for that. And I think I had the chance to work for a really special human being at the University of North Carolina named Dean Smith, and a legendary Hall of Fame basketball coach who was the winningest coach in the history of college coaching for the longest time. And I remember Coach Smith saying once, when you've and I'm paraphrasing, but the idea was when you run out of the ability to coach, screaming ensues. Mm. When you run out of the ability to teach, screaming ensues. When you run out of the ability to parent, screaming ensues. Because I believe, once again, Proverbs writer, the power of life and death is in the tongue. Mm-hmm. Your body language is horrible. Who do you think you are? Mm-hmm. Not real productive. Even as a coach, I try. Don't always get it right, once again, but I try. But when I get it wrong, I'm transparent. Hey, with Isaac and Grace, with my players, hey, man, I screwed that up, and I'm so sorry. And part of my responsibility as a father is to model for you how I want to live my life and how I want to reflect my values. And I didn't get it right yesterday, and I am so sorry. Anyway, so Grace navigated that well and owned it. So she's in volleyball, but her great calling is theater. She loves to sing and writes music and plays the little guitar, the ukulele. Yeah, she plays the piano, plays the guitar a little bit. It's taking lessons, but loves to sing. And one of our favorite things to do is to sit in the living room at night. And Isaac will be sitting at the dining room table, writing his stories. Mm-hmm. Grace will be sitting in the living room, and we'll just sit on this. There's no television in the living room, by the way. No television in the living room. And Grace will just sing, play the piano and sing while Isaac's writing his stories. And in between her songs, Isaac will read a paragraph. And we just love doing that. There's something about that that's just real special for us. And we recognize that we take a snapshot in our mind's eyes of those moments, because we understand that there will be a day where we're going to look up and they're not going to be in the house anymore.
Mm.
And it's hard though as parents because you're so tired and you just want to go to bed.
Yeah.
And so just being able to lay there and enjoy Grace's beautiful voice and her joyful spirit. We talk about the angel named Joy that is Grace's companion.
Mm.
And the angel named Joy, we tell a story about God being in heaven and saying, hey, I need to send a little girl down to earth to be with his family because I wrote about it. And she likes to hear the story. God says, hey, there's a family down on earth who's going to need a lot of strength because they're getting ready to endure some great pain. Who wants to go? Mm. And the little angel named Grace raised her hand and said, I'll go. And her best friend Joy said, I'll go with her. and so Grace brings our family great joy. She has this joyful spirit, and her friends are such a joyful group of girls as well. She had her birthday the other day, and I was sitting back watching how unique her group of friends are, because in that group was a biracial girl, was a little girl from Africa, a little Hispanic girl, and they came from different ethnic backgrounds, mm-hmm. different social backgrounds, different economic backgrounds. And being teachers, we certainly aren't the wealthiest people either. But I was just thinking about how blessed we were to live in a community of people who see past all those surface. We embrace that. We don't ignore it. We're not colorblind. Mm-hmm. We're not ethnic blind. We love your ethnicity, and we love your story, and we like to hear your story. And can we ask questions about it? We see your special needs son. We're not going to ignore that. We're going to love that and embrace that. And so I like the fact that she has this amazing, diverse group of friends that she's sharing this journey with.
Yeah. So now tell us about Solomon. What's his interests, gifts,
Solomon loves our tandem bicycle rides. Mm-hmm. He's getting too big for me. He gives me a workout. He challenges me because he doesn't always pedal. And he loves riding the golf cart at the lake house. He loves riding the inner tube at the lake house. And he likes going to Six Flags as well. He'll ride the small rides, not the big roller coasters. We say often that the two places where we feel normal as a family, oddly enough, are Six Flags, because we can do that together.
Yes.
We don't have to 3 go and 2 stay behind. Mm-hmm. Church is hard because Isaac and Grace and a parent goes, and then another parent goes with Saul, but often we have to leave. Movies, we don't get to go together. Restaurants are hard. Public places, the grocery store is hard. So finding places where we can be normal. So one of those places, oddly enough, is Six Flags. And so we like to hit Six Flags as a group of 5. And the other place is the lake house. He loves riding the inner tube. He'll jump on the inner tube with Isaac, and they wrestle on the inner tube and push each other off and splash into the water and laugh and ride the golf carts together. And Solomon thinks it's really cool when he and Isaac get to go by themselves on the golf cart and mom and dad aren't there, because it makes him feel like a big boy. Mm-hmm. And, a beautiful story about Solomon just last Thursday on that ride that I referenced earlier, Mel. Towards the end of the ride, we're about as far away from the house as you can be. Storm clouds rolled in all of a sudden on Thursday, and a big rainstorm hit. And so I'm pedaling like mad, trying to get home out of the rain. This is a great metaphor. It's a story. It's a chapter in my next book that I titled "A Gentle Breeze" from Elijah. When Elijah said the earth quaked and I didn't see God, and a huge gust of wind rushed through and I didn't see God. Then a gentle breeze. I felt a gentle breeze and I heard the voice of God. And so it's all these stories of where God very subtly and gently reveals himself. So this is a chapter from last Thursday. I'm pedaling like mad, trying to get home out of the rain. Solomon, come on, Bubba, let's go. And I'm actually getting a little bit tired and a little bit frustrated because he's not pedaling. He's not cooperating. And then I hear a giggle on the back seat of the tandem. Mm-hmm. And I peek over my shoulder, and Solomon is on the back seat with his hands spread out wide, laughing at the rain. And at that moment, I felt God, and I pictured God. I pictured God in heaven saying, "Hey, Peter, come here." Paul, come here, man. Hey, Holy Spirit, hey, guys, watch this. And you just feel God's finger. And I just stopped in the middle of this rainstorm. And I turned to look at Saul and said, hey, let's get off and walk. And so we got off the bicycle and this huge downpour on Thursday, and just walked back to the house as Solomon giggled and laughed. And so I got to talk to Solomon. But mom's going to think this is so silly, Solomon. And he likes hearing about mom. Isaac's going to say, Bubba, why are you getting so wet out there? And we had this 20-minute walk in the rain. And God says, why are we so busy in life, running after things and running away from things that are so unimportant, when we should just stop and just bask in his life-giving rain?
Yes.
This life-giving rain, this metaphorical baptism, if you will.
Yeah.
So anyway, so he loves the bicycle rides. He loves the golf cart rides. He loves the inner tube. So
Awesome. All right. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. We're at the top of the hour, but is there anything that I didn't ask you that I should have asked you, or just that you want to say in general?
Well, for starters, thank you. You've been a great friend through this journey. And you're one of those people who blessed us and loved us when we came. And I say this a lot. When we came to Flower Mound 8 years ago, it was still a dark place. It was still a dark place. We didn't know where we were going to get the next $20 bill to put gas in our car. And so a part of that bike ride to school was born out of the need to save money. Because our house is in foreclosure. We're $250,000 in debt. We had lost everything because our insurance company had dropped us. And we were leaving a group of people in Oklahoma who loved us. But we had to come here, and we weren't sure of what it was going to be like. And UMail, along with our Flower Mound family, loved us and just embraced us. With Sonia Lale, our principal, and our administration and our faculty, loved me unconditionally. And you, along with our Flower Mound family, and our kids at Flower Mound, taught me to laugh again. And I still remember the first day that I laughed again. And I was in class one day, and a group of young guys named Xavier Sykes and Michael Toretti and Connor George, and I think Cumby may have been in that group. They were football kids, oddly enough, and my basketball players were also a blessing. They made me laugh in class one day. And I remember thinking, I'd forgotten what it felt like. I'd forgotten what it felt like. And so my message is, find the guy in front of you who's struggling. Even when he has a smile, he may be struggling, and love him. Find the girl in front of you and love her. Find the mom parenting with a purpose, and love her, and just be a conduit of grace and love and mercy in our world, and love crazy. Be crazy in your love. So anyway, thank you for being that person, Mel.
Oh, thank you. You were, I told you, you're inspiration. You're somebody I looked up to. You're a mentor to me. So, and you just dropped so much wisdom here. So I just thank you for your time and your wisdom.
Thanks, Mel. Love you, sister. Have a great day.
I love you too. All right. Bye-bye. Thank you.